Okay, so let's get into this. We're doing a deep dive today into the Golden State Killer.
Oh, it's a really chilling and complex story.
It absolutely is. And we're drawing heavily on the analysis from Jake Thompson and Dr. Emily Carter on the Pulse 5 podcast, right?
Exactly. They offered some really sharp insights. So our goal here is to kind of pull out the key facts, the big turning points, and I think importantly, the human side of it all.
Yeah, definitely. Because what really jumps out based on their discussion is this contrast. You have this extreme evil, but then also this incredible strength from the people affected.
Right. So we want to synthesize those key points, make it understandable, give you a good handle on this really harrowing story.
Let's start with the basics then, the time frame. We're talking, what, mid-70s?
Yeah, 1976 running through to 1986, a whole decade where California communities were just terrified.
And the scope was huge, not just one area. We're talking over 50 sexual assaults.
13 murders and more than 120 burglaries, all linked eventually to one guy. That sheer scale. It really highlights why it was so incredibly difficult for law enforcement for such a long time.
Absolutely. And spreading across such a wide part of California must have made connecting the dots almost impossible early on.
Yeah, definitely complicated things.
And his methods,
Yeah.
the modus operandi. It's deeply disturbing stuff.
It really is. The way he'd stalk neighborhoods, learn routines, meticulous.
Yeah, and leaving those bindings on doorsteps, like some kind of awful trophy or calling card.
And the returning. That's the part that really gets you. Coming back to the homes weeks later.
Weeks later, why? What's the thinking there?
Well, as Dr. Carter pointed out, it speaks volumes about the psychological driver, that need for control.
Control, like reliving it.
Exactly. A compulsion almost.
Yeah.
Re-experiencing that violation, that dominance, really makes you think, what fuels that?
Yeah, and for decades, nothing. No arrests for these specific crimes. I mean, it must have seemed completely unsolvable.
Absolutely a total cold case for so long.
But then 2018 happens, and everything changes. Genetic genealogy.
Right. This is the massive turning point. Can you maybe walk us through why that was so huge?
Well, as I understand it, it wasn't about finding his DNA directly in a criminal database initially.
No, that's the key. They used crime scene DNA, but compared it to profiles in public genealogy databases, the kind people use to find relatives.
So they found distant cousins or something.
Distant relatives, yeah.
Yeah.
And from there, it was like building this massive family tree, working backwards and forwards through generations. Painstaking work.
Wow. Until they eventually narrowed it down.
To Joseph James D'Angelo, it completely changed how investigators could approach these really old, cold cases. A total revolution, really.
And the most, I don't know, chilling part, his background.
Yeah. Former police officer.
It's just hard to wrap your head around. How did that play into it?
Well, think about it. Paul Holes put it very bluntly, didn't he? He weaponized his badge.
Weaponized his badge. Wow.
He knew police procedures. He knew how investigations worked. He could anticipate things.
So he could actively avoid detection, using his knowledge.
Exactly. Disabling porch lights, knowing how patrols might work, even using police jargon to intimidate victims.
Making them afraid to call the actual police, isolating them even more.
Precisely. It's a profound betrayal of trust on top of everything else.
And then there's the double life aspect. This guy was married, had kids.
Lived a seemingly normal suburban life, your average neighbor, on the surface.
How does someone do that? Live with that kind of split?
It points to extreme compartmentalization, psychologically walling off different parts of your life.
Like two separate people almost.
Dr. Carter talked about cognitive dissonance, that fractured identity. The family man here, the night stalker over there.
Did the mask ever slip, though? Were there signs?
Apparently, yes. Towards the end, maybe.
Yeah.
Neighbors recalled some odd things, incoherent screaming, things like that.
So,
signs the facade was maybe cracking.
Right. And the crimes themselves, they didn't stay the same, did they? They got worse.
Oh, absolutely. There was a clear escalation. Started with burglary.
Then rape.
And ultimately murder.
It's a terrifying pattern. You see that sometimes, like with Bundy, that progression.
Yeah, it often suggests that the need for control is growing. Maybe the empathy is just gone.
Dr. Carter's phrase, erasing futures, that really stuck with me.
It's stark, isn't it? It wasn't just the act itself. It was wiping out everything that person was and could have been.
And the impact on those who survived. There was that audio clip you mentioned from the HBO documentary.
Yeah, I'll Be Gone in the Dark. An anonymous survivor talking about the fear. Still hearing his breathing years later.
And then the relief, finally being able to sleep after he was caught. Just captures that long shadow of trauma.
It really does.
Mm.
It just underscores how vital getting justice is, even decades later, for the people who went through that horror.
And it's incredible, really, how many survivors didn't just endure, but became advocates.
That's a really powerful part of this story. People like Michelle McNamara, whose book brought so much attention back to the case.
Yeah, her work was amazing. Tragic, she didn't live to see him caught.
But her work, and the work of so many survivors, turning that trauma into a purpose, it's truly remarkable. Testament to human resilience.
Which brings up a tricky point, doesn't it? How we tell these stories. True crime.
Yeah, the ethics of it's a fine line.
How do you explore the case without, making the killer the star, without glorifying it?
The key, as Dr. Carter stressed, is always centering the victims and survivors, their experiences, their search for justice.
Making the focus there.
Absolutely. And that's why his sentencing in 2020 felt so significant as a platform for them.
Yeah, for them to finally speak directly to him in many cases. We heard that gavel sound in the audio source material. Felt final.
A punctuation mark, definitely. But D'Angelo himself.
Nothing, just silence, right? No remorse shown.
None. And that silence, that lack of any apparent remorse, it's profoundly
It
unsettling.
really is. It leaves you with this awful question.
What's more terrifying? The monster himself, the axe.
Or the fact that the monster looks just like anyone, a regular person on the surface.
Exactly. The human face of that kind of evil. It's hard to process.
It is. For listeners interested in exploring these kinds of psychological depths further, the Pulse Vibe podcast guys mentioned a bonus episode they did.
Yeah, on their Patreon. About BTK's daughter, I think.
Mm.
Delving into the family side of these things, the ripple effects. Another layer entirely.
Right. So bringing all this together, pulling back from the details, what's the main takeaway from their analysis?
I think drawing from what Thompson and Carter discussed, it boils down to this extreme evil, this kind of malevolence. It isn't some supernatural thing. It's human.
Human capacity.
Yeah. But then so is the drive for justice. That relentless pursuit by investigators, by survivors, by people like Michelle McNamara, that's just as human.
That's a really powerful way to frame it. Evil is human, but so is the fight against it.
Exactly.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening, just reflect on that. The idea that someone could live such a completely split life, family man and predator, it raises some really deep questions.
Questions about potential, maybe. What lies hidden, even in people who seem completely ordinary.
Yeah, the capacity for both incredible good and, well, this kind of extreme harm, all within human nature. It's something complex to sit with.